Ellis squinted at the sky with the kind of suspicion usually reserved for politicians and malfunctioning microwaves. There was something off about the cloud formation. Too symmetrical, like a graphic designer had gotten bored and started experimenting with weather patterns. He scratched his chin, flicked a pebble off the rooftop ledge, and took a slow sip from his lukewarm synth brew. As always, it tasted like burnt rubber and ambition. He hated it. He drank it anyway. The sirens hadn't gone off yet, which meant the thing streaking through the sky either wasn't on any official radar or had bribed the radar technicians. That was becoming more common lately. Ellis lowered his mug, frowned, and muttered, "If that's another tourist ship mistaking our atmosphere for a luxury spa, I swear I'll—" He stopped. The object broke through the clouds with a guttural shriek, trailing blue fire and something that looked suspiciously like shrapnel. It hit the eastern scrapyard with a thunderous crack, followed by the unmistakable hiss of melting metal. Ellis blinked, then sighed. Well, I guess that's my afternoon canceled. 10 minutes later, he was weaving through the rusted skeletons of decommissioned freighters and gutted AI tanks, dodging security drones with the practiced grace of someone who didn't technically work here anymore. The scrapyard was a maze of sharp edges and forgotten war relics, all buzzing faintly with leftover electromagnetic grumpiness. Ellis moved quickly, his boots crunching on glass and scorched sand. He rounded a corner and froze. There, half buried in a crater of scorched earth and vaporized fence line, was the wreck. It wasn't anything he recognized, not Terran, not Martian, not one of those flashy Saturnian hybrids that always exploded when you pressed the wrong button. This was something else entirely. Sleek, alien, and humming with a deep, pulsing light that vibrated in his molars. The cockpit hissed open. She emerged like a specter, staggering forward in armor that looked like it had once been majestic, but had clearly taken a few rounds from a cosmic shotgun. Her skin was pale, almost luminous. Her ears were long, elegant, and pointed skyward as if trying to hear thoughts from another planet. Her hair, tangled and streaked with soot, was a color Ellis couldn't quite name. Yellow, maybe. Gold, if he were feeling poetic. She stared at him with eyes too calm for someone bleeding from the shoulder. Only a real human would know this, she said, voice low, deliberate. Ellis blinked. If this is about taxes, I'm going to disappoint you. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't raise her weapon. Not yet. He could tell she was scanning him, not just visually, but with whatever kind of sensor tech was embedded in that armor. He wondered if it could read his cholesterol levels. Answer, she said. Ellis glanced around. No backup. No incoming emergency responders. Just him, a very pointy-looking alien woman, and the distinct smell of ozone and destiny. He exhaled. A real human, he said slowly, knows that vending machines labeled fresh sandwich are neither fresh nor sandwich. A pause, then, like a glitch in reality, she laughed, short and sharp, but genuine. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed forward. Ellis cursed and caught her just before her helmet hit the dirt. She was heavy, like she'd been built for gravity that didn't trust its own strength. He dragged her out of the open, ignoring the protest of his spine and the sparks still leaking from her ship. The safe house was an old maintenance tunnel 2 blocks south, formerly used to store municipal cleaning bots, now home to someone who couldn't quite manage rent but had plenty of free time. Ellis laid her down on the cot and yanked the emergency med kit from the wall. It had 1 injector left, and he hoped her species wasn't allergic to painkillers. He hesitated for half a second, then jabbed it into the soft part of her arm. She groaned. You could have at least asked first. Yeah, but then I'd have to deal with you saying no. Her eyes opened, still glassy but focused now. Name? Ellis, you? A pause. Varel. He nodded. Varel. Cool. Sounds like a luxury shampoo or a knife brand. You got a preference? She frowned. You're taking this very lightly. I tend to do that when I find myself in a life or death scenario with an interstellar stranger who could probably throw me across the room if she was fully conscious. Another pause, then softer. You said something before. About vending machines. Ellis grinned. Yeah, you laughed. That means you're either friendly or delirious. Her brow furrowed. That phrase, it's a type of passphrase. Humor as authentication. Ancient protocol from an old alliance. Ellis sat back, wary now. You mean Jokes are passwords? They were, she said. Long ago. In the war against the Nullborn, our ancestors used humor to identify allies. The Nullborn didn't understand it. Ellis looked up at the rusted pipes overhead. So we're fighting galactic murder machines with knock-knock jokes? Her lips twitched. Something like that. Silence settled in the dim room, broken only by the hum of buried power conduits. She shifted, wincing as she sat up. Her hand hovered near the weapon clipped to her side, but didn't move. Ellis reached into a nearby drawer and tossed her a protein bar. Earth cuisine, he said. It tastes like despair. She took it, sniffed, then bit. You weren't exaggerating. They sat there for a while. Just two people, one human, one not, sharing stale food in a crumbling city, while the rest of the world obliviously spun on. Eventually, Varel asked, "Why did you come to the crash?" Ellis hesitated. "I don't know. Gut feeling. Maybe I just wanted to see something different." She studied him, quiet again. Her expression was unreadable, but something about it made him shift uncomfortably. "You might be more different than you think," she said finally. "That's what my high school therapist said. Turns out I just needed better friends." Outside, the sky flickered briefly, as if the stars were winking. Ellis woke to the sound of soft humming that wasn't coming from any of his usual nightmares. He blinked, momentarily unsure if the faint vibration in the walls was a pipe preparing to explode, or just his guest settling in. Varel sat cross-legged on the floor, her armor stripped to its underlayer, a mess of translucent cables and dull metal shards scattered around her like the remains of a tech-themed piñata. "You ever heard of coffee?" Ellis asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "It's how most humans greet near-death mornings." Varel didn't look up. "I scanned your kitchen unit. Your so-called coffee is 47% petroleum byproduct. It builds character." She plucked something from a broken device and held it to the light. "This interface chip, primitive but adaptive. I can repurpose it." "Good for you. Maybe later you can help me fix my toaster. It's been plotting against me since March." She didn't laugh, but there was a twitch at the corner of her mouth. Ellis took that as progress. He poured 2 mugs of synth brew and set one beside her. She stared at it as if he'd offered her a sample of radioactive sludge, which technically he had once done to a date. Long story. Varel took a tentative sip, coughed once, and said flatly, "It tastes like betrayal. Welcome to Earth." They spent most of the morning in relative silence, save for the occasional curse from Ellis whenever he banged his knee on the storage crate and Varel's rhythmic tinkering. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic. She was building something, and Ellis wasn't sure whether it would fix their problems or make them exponentially worse. By midday, she had what looked like a functioning translation array, albeit one held together by wire ties and chewing gum. She fitted it into the device embedded in her collar. It hissed, sparked once, and then made a pleasant chiming sound that Ellis immediately distrusted. "Now," she said, standing, "we talk properly. I thought we were already doing that. You have many words, few of them are useful." "That's what my last boss said, right before the explosion." She ignored that. "I need to know how you spoke the phrase yesterday, the one only known to the Lorithai in the Solar Bloods." Ellis scratched the back of his neck. "Right, that. I was kind of winging it. I get these flashes, dreams, words I've never learned, but somehow know. Like when you hear a song for the first time and already know the chorus. Synesthetic memory convergence, or something older." She moved closer, her expression tightening. "Say it again." He hesitated, then repeated the phrase. "Adora lon vestalarim." The words fell from his tongue like they'd been waiting there. Varel's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Wonder, maybe, or fear, or both. "That confirms it," she said softly. "You're linked to the solar bloodline." Ellis blinked. "That sounds like a failed metal band." She didn't smile. They were not a band. They were a civilization, ancient, vanished. Their DNA carried encryption matrices, dormant until activated by proximity to certain technologies or people. Ellis looked down at himself. "Well, I'm flattered. Do I at least get a cool scar or glowing tattoo? You may get hunted. That's usually the next step." The mood shifted, thickening like soupy air before a storm. Ellis crossed his arms. "Why were you even here in the first place?" "I wasn't supposed to be. My original mission was a diplomatic transfer, classified data, sensitive tech. Someone interfered. My nav system rerouted mid-jump. They wanted me here. Near you. Why? I didn't ask. I was too busy not dying. A knock echoed through the tunnel like a bullet wrapped in politeness. 3 slow raps, then silence. Ellis's blood froze. No one knew this place. No one ever knocked. Varel drew a sleek weapon from a compartment in her suit, still damaged but functional. She nodded once. Ellis moved toward the entrance, quietly bypassing the sensor locks. The outer hatch creaked open a sliver. A man in a charcoal gray uniform stood there, unnaturally still. His skin was smooth, too smooth, and his eyes blinked in a rhythm that made Ellis's stomach twist. "Mr. Ellis," the man said, tone syrupy. "Citizen Review Services. May we conduct a brief compliance scan?" Ellis slammed the hatch shut and turned back to Varel. "Bad news, android with a clipboard." "Authority model?" "Government type. Scary polite." Varel flicked a switch on her weapon. "They found me. Or rather, you." The lights dimmed. Somewhere above them, distant mechanical whirring signaled a surveillance drone entering search mode. Ellis turned to her. "You got any clever plans, or is this the part where we improvise and probably die?" "I don't improvise." "Great. You're gonna love this." They fled through a narrow maintenance shaft, navigating by memory and blind instinct. Behind them, the tunnel filled with static as the drone descended, scanning for heat signatures. Varel dropped a charge behind them. It detonated with a concussive whump, momentarily scrambling the drone's sensors. They emerged in a collapsed sector of Old Town, the part of the city no one visited unless they were hiding, dying, or buying illicit candy. Ellis led her through a labyrinth of broken rooftops and abandoned billboards, finally collapsing behind a rusted air filtration unit. Panting, he glanced at her. "So, still think I'm just a regular human?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the skyline, on the shimmering dome now flickering above the city center. "That's not a patrol beacon. That's a pulse relay. Someone just activated a signal grid." "Signal to what?" "To whoever wants you back." Ellis leaned his head against the metal, laughed once without humor. "Well, there goes my weekend." She studied him for a long moment. "We need allies." "Got any left?" She paused. "One. Maybe. But they won't be happy to see me." Ellis sighed. "Why does that not surprise me?" She stood, extending a hand. "Come on, Solar Blood. Time to see just how human you really are." Ellis had expected the edge of the world to look more dramatic. Maybe some screaming tectonic plates or a glowing chasm full of secrets. Instead, it was a crumbling research dome, half buried in sand, surrounded by cacti that looked judgmental. Varel stared at it with something between reverence and exhaustion, her long ears twitching as if listening for ghosts. "This is your grand plan?" Ellis asked. "A retirement home for mad scientists?" She adjusted a small device at her wrist and murmured, "This was once a Lorathe forward station. If anyone still listens, they're buried in here." He squinted at the dome. "And if they're not listening, then we die creatively." "Could you define creatively in this context?" "I'd like to prepare a will." They entered the structure cautiously. The walls were layered with dust and coated glyphs. Varel placed her palm against a panel, and the floor hummed beneath them. Lights blinked to life like ancient stars waking from a nap. A low feminine voice spoke in Lorathan. Varel replied swiftly. The dome answered with a chime, and a hidden stairway began to rise from the floor. Ellis whistled. "If my apartment had that, I'd never use stairs again." "I doubt your apartment responds to ancient bloodlines." He tilted his head. "Mine responds to rats." They descended into what looked like a command hub fused with a cathedral. Holograms hovered like ghosts. One flickered into focus. A tall figure with eyes like molten glass, and ears even longer than Varel's. Ellis whispered, "Uncle?" Varel didn't laugh. She dropped to one knee. Ellis stood awkwardly, wondering if he should bow or offer a fist bump. The hologram scanned him, its voice echoing with a music-like rhythm. Varel translated, "It acknowledges you, Ellis. It says the blood phrase you spoke confirms your inheritance. I always suspected I was part alien royalty. It also says you're catastrophically untrained and likely a cosmic liability. That sounds more accurate." The hologram dimmed, leaving behind a pedestal that opened to reveal a crystalline matrix pulsing with faint energy. Varel stepped back. "That's the archive core. We need it to reset the relay grid. But once we remove it, The dome's location will be exposed. Ellis cracked his knuckles. Right. So, we take it and run? She nodded. We take it and run. They did. The moment the core was lifted, the air shimmered, and a shock wave pulsed outward. On the surface, a black craft sliced through the atmosphere, silent and sleek. It hovered above the desert like a vulture with LED eyes. Visitors, Ellis muttered, ducking as a blaster beam sizzled past his head. Uninvited ones. They sprinted through the sand, Ellis tripping twice, once on a rock and once on his own disbelief. Varel shot down 2 drones with cold precision, yelling coordinates into her wrist. I called in that favor. My unhappy ally is en route. How unhappy? Extremely. I may have married their sibling during a spy op. Ellis winced. You really don't do anything halfway, do you? Before she could answer, the sky split with a sonic boom. A jagged vessel streaked downward, its wings bristling with weaponry and bad decisions. It landed with a hiss, and outstepped a broad-shouldered being with lava-orange eyes and a general demeanor of unpaid debt. You brought the human? The being barked. I didn't have a choice, Varel said. He smells like regret and cheese. Ellis smiled weakly. It's my signature scent. They didn't wait to argue. Inside the ship, Varel slammed the core into the command socket. The vessel's systems flared to life, initiating a deep code ping that rippled through planetary satellites and beyond. The relay grid blinked green. For the first time in decades, the old Lorathe signal hummed through human networks. The android agents detected it immediately. But before they could triangulate the ship's position, the system overloaded their uplinks. The public message wasn't what they expected. Just a simple phrase, repeated across every visible frequency. Only a real human would know this. Ellis laughed out loud. That's what she said. Varel shot him a look. Don't ruin it. The alien ally, whose name Ellis still couldn't pronounce, navigated the ship back toward the orbital layer. Earth spun below them, no longer a hiding place but a beacon. The truth was out. The Lorathe had never vanished. They had simply gone quiet, waiting, watching. In orbit, Ellis leaned against a control panel and looked at Varel. So now what? I become ambassador to the galaxy? Or do I just hide again and pretend I'm not carrying super alien blood? You decide, she said. Your blood may be ancient, but your choices are yours. He smirked. I think I'll start with something small, maybe less saving the world, more figuring out how to fly this thing without crashing into a moon. Wise. She moved beside him, her posture finally relaxed, ears softening at the tips. You surprise me, Ellis. Is that a compliment? It's the closest I've ever come to one. He grinned. Then I'm honored. They looked out together, past the arc of Earth's shadow, where stars waited patiently. Below them, the message continued to repeat. Some heard it and ignored it. Some heard it and remembered. And some heard it and began to move. Whatever came next, Ellis knew one thing. He wasn't just some guy scraping by in the tunnels. He was part of something bigger, stranger, and infinitely more ridiculous than he'd ever imagined. And if that meant running from space assassins with an alien woman who drank coffee like a warrior poet, well, he could live with that.